The veil of light that falls like liquid gold from the chandeliers in the hall rests upon his shoulders. The hall is utterly silent, his eyes are closed, and yet he can clearly feel their gazes. His fingers rest on the strings of his violin, every movement fluid. He no longer has to think about it. He simply lets go, and the bow glides across the strings as if by itself. He no longer sees the crowd, nor the orchestra behind him. He perceives only the sound of the music, and he smiles. At last, he has made it. From today on, he is the first concertmaster of the Beethoven Symphony Orchestra in Flensburg, Germany. And he will not be giving up his position anytime soon. Every orchestra is strictly hierarchical. The role of the first concertmaster is the most important after the conductor. The first concertmaster, also known as the principal violinist, presents and leads the orchestra. All instruments orient themselves by his playing. He is the link between the orchestra and the conductor. He must be confident, play flawlessly, and fully master his instrument. If he cannot, the entire orchestra loses its sound. Oliver Sheppard is 29 years old when he applies for the position of first concertmaster in the symphony orchestra and manages to prevail over the competition. He grows up in Isernhagen, an upscale suburb of Hanover. Shortly after starting school, he receives his first violin lesson. He falls in love with the sound of the instrument and practices every day. And he quickly figures he wants to become a professional musician, and his parents, both ophthalmologists, do everything they can to support him. When Oliver reached his teenage years, he realized that he feels more attracted to men than to women, something he fights against with all his strength and tries to hide. In the 1970s, homosexuality was still a taboo subject, and Oliver was afraid of putting everything at risk: his parents' love and his career as a violinist. But he cannot win the war he wages against himself, and when, at the age of 15, he attempts to take his own life for the first time and survives, he confides in his parents. Above all, he fears his father's reaction, but to Oliver's surprise, his parents are more than understanding. They even sent Oliver to a therapist to help him accept and love his sexuality and thus himself. Music helps him most of all. In it, Oliver can completely lose himself and give free rein to his emotions. His talent does not go unnoticed. He performs with the state orchestra at the Opera House and later completes postgraduate studies for soloists. One day, he hears that a position as first concertmaster has opened up with an orchestra in Flensburg. Now he has finally reached his goal. He thrives completely in his new role. His colleagues value him greatly because despite his high position, he never acts superior. He befriends a colleague named Adam, a cellist from the south, and later Adam's girlfriend Catherine, a violinist as well. And at last, things are going well in Oliver's love life. His life partner is also a violinist, but he does not perform actively. Instead, he teaches at a university. In 1989, the Berlin Wall falls, symbolizing the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Iron Curtain. Since then, numerous outstanding musicians from the former GDR and the East have flowed into the West. The level and the bar for professional musicians rise to breathtaking heights. Oliver Sheppard feels this as well. He is now 51 years old and has been first concertmaster for 23 years. The orchestra is a different one compared to the time before 1989. Oliver feels the growing demands more and more clearly. He begins to sleep poorly and seems increasingly stressed. He also feels the years of playing at the highest level in his fingers. He constantly has to wear a bandage to endure the pain. But he does not seek medical treatment. He simply cannot afford to be sick or to miss performances. Because someone else already has their eye on his position as first concertmaster and is only waiting for Oliver to vacate the seat. And if necessary, he will have to give fate a little push to make that happen sooner. That person is the orchestra's second concertmaster, Mikhail Ivanov. He is 42 years old and a very temperamental violinist who comes from a Russian family of musicians and who also moved to the West after the fall of the wall. Oliver would later report that Ivanov played deliberately loudly and whispered to him during rehearsals that he couldn't play well. Ivanov would sometimes turn the shared sheet music pages too early and sometimes too late. The general music director at the time, Robert Stone, who determines the program and appoints the musicians, also visibly puts Oliver under pressure. Stone is young and ambitious and pushes the musicians toward absolute perfection. Oliver visibly falls by the wayside. He is constantly criticized and belittled by Robert. The orchestra, supposedly, has to rehearse only because of him. Oliver wants to work less in order to cope with the stress, but when he asked Robert Stone, he refused. All or nothing. A role like that cannot be split. But at the same time, Robert includes the most difficult symphonies in the program, knowing that Oliver can no longer cope. He fully expects Oliver to step down of his own accord. But Oliver does not give up so easily. With the help of his friends and colleagues Adam and Catherine, he prepares written records of the confrontations with Stone and Ivanov and sends them to the orchestra's board. There is no response. Oliver's condition deteriorates. He hardly sleeps, has panic attacks before rehearsals. He has to force himself to get out of bed in the morning. And then, in the year 2018, he gives up. He accepts a position as first violin and steps down as concertmaster. Mikhail Ivanov is temporarily promoted to the new first concertmaster. But when the musicians are later asked to vote on whether Mikhail should keep the role permanently, most of them vote against it. Ivanov may be an outstanding musician, but empathy and team spirit are also needed. For the self-centered Mikhail, however, team spirit is a foreign concept. Actually, Oliver should be happy about this. But he is not. Inside him burns a white, glowing hatred every single day when he sees Mikhail sit in the concertmaster's chair and fails to appreciate the art even half as much as he does. He blames Mikhail Ivanov for the end of his career and his artistic life. He wants to get rid of him, and he already knows how. In October 2019, when Oliver once again cannot sleep, he sits at his computer and comes across a case of a Bavarian farmer who had tried to murder his parents with the poison Brodifacoum. The poison inhibits blood clotting. The victim dies sometime later from internal bleeding. Oliver also reads that the farmer had simply ordered the poison in China, because it is available in higher concentration and larger quantities than in Germany. It takes 56 milligrams of brodifacoum to kill a human. On November the 4th, 2019, Oliver ordered 20 grams of brodifacoum in powder form for the equivalent of $95. There's only one problem. He has no idea how to slip the poison to Ivanov. There's no shared break room or cafeteria in the theater where the orchestra rehearses. Ivanov never goes out with Oliver and the other colleagues. When the orchestra performs concerts outside Flensburg, Ivanov travels alone by car, not with the others on the tour bus. But Oliver is determined. As soon as an opportunity arises, he will strike. But then, everything turned out very differently. A few days later, Oliver and his friends Adam and Catherine are sitting on the tour bus on the way back to Flensburg after another first-class concert. They drink wine and eat bread with an herb dip that Oliver always makes himself and brings along. The shared meal on the tour bus after concerts is their little ritual. The next morning, Catherine wakes up in her bed and feels strangely weak and disoriented. The blood running from her nose has already turned her entire pillow red. She can literally taste the blood in her mouth. She decides to rest for the day. A few hours later, the bleeding stops and she feels better. 4 days later, Adam celebrates his 61st birthday and his promotion to principal cellist. Catherine and Oliver are also invited. Oliver gives Adam a few valuable cufflinks from his deceased father and a bottle of red wine. 4 days later, Adam feels unusual pain in his kidney area. Shortly afterward, he discovers blood in his urine and also has nosebleeds, just like his girlfriend Catherine. She too had been bleeding again since the birthday celebration. They both visit a urologist and an ear, nose, and throat specialist without results. But the bleeding doesn't stop. Adam and Catherine get worse and worse. 1 week after the birthday celebration, both are admitted to different hospitals. Adam's doctors are the first to consider poisoning. Oliver calls both Adam and Catherine every day. In the hospital where Catherine is staying, they have also now found the cause of her complaints. Catherine even amuses herself over the phone with Oliver about the strange name of the poison, brodifacoum. What Catherine and Adam do not know, besides them, there's another person in the hospital because of brodifacoum poisoning in the city of Kiel, just 1 hour's drive from Flensburg. An older lady who lives in a retirement residence had also been admitted to the hospital a few days earlier because of persistent bleeding. Brodifacoum poisonings have to be reported in Germany, and the fact that 3 cases occur within such a short time in a limited area makes the police take notice. Nearly 2 years later, Adam and Catherine are surprisingly summoned again for police questioning at the local police station. After all, they had already given a statement after their recovery. Both are sitting in the interrogation room when suddenly the door opens and 2 officers enter, with Oliver Sheppard. He had also been summoned. The whole scene is strange and untypical for the police, but there's a well-thought-out plan behind it. The officers want to see how Adam and Catherine react when they learn that the older woman, who was also poisoned with brodifacoum, is Oliver Sheppard's mother. They also want to see how Oliver reacts to this in the presence of his friends. But to their surprise, Oliver remains calm and merely claims that he cannot explain the connection either. Adam and Catherine also find the coincidence strange, but neither of them can imagine that Oliver could be behind it. He is their friend. Although the officers find no poison in Oliver's apartment, they do find an invoice from China proving that he had bought Brodifacoum 3 years earlier. And on January the 12th, 2023, Oliver Sheppard was arrested. In September of 2023, the trial against Oliver Sheppard began. During the trial, Oliver sat mostly silent on the defendant's bench, looking down at the floor. He does admit that he planned an attack on Ivanov and bought the Brodifacoum, but he denies ever wanting to harm his mother or his best friends. He claims he had no motive. But the public prosecutor sees this differently. According to the indictment, the defendant wanted to spare his mother a long period of suffering and teach his friends a lesson for not supporting him more clearly in the fight against Stone and Ivanov. The psychiatric expert attests to the defendant's pronounced narcissism in court, but immediately adds that this would be the case with anyone who has a high school diploma, a career, or a university degree. In the first trial, the verdict is mild: 6 years in prison for attempted murder of his mother and 2 counts of grievous bodily harm. However, the public prosecutor lodges an appeal. Surprisingly, in the second trial, Oliver admits to deliberately poisoning his mother. He says he mixed the Brodifacoum into sweetened cream cheese and then used it as cake icing. At the same time, the Tupperware container with the herb dip for the orchestra had been standing on the kitchen counter. Some of the Brodifacoum must have accidentally gotten into it. But this explanation does not convince the court. No one can imagine that such a structured and perfection-driven person as the defendant could have let something like that happen. And so the poisonings of Adam and Catherine are now also classified as attempted murder. Oliver Sheppard's sentence was increased to 7.5 years. Neither the defense nor the prosecution appealed the verdict. Oliver Sheppard turns out to be a model prisoner. He works as a house orderly and is allowed to move freely throughout the building from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. He cleans, distributes food, and mediates during disputes between prison officers and inmates. And sometimes, when he has some time to himself, he stands in his cell in front of the barred window, looks out, and lifts the bow to his electric violin. Only he can hear the notes through his headphones. And he plays, just for fun and just for himself. That was Case 5, The Violinist.